Ever wondered what it feels like when your parents put a price on you? Mine was 96 million. I'm Ava Brooks, and my dad raised his glass, stared past me, and said, "Everything goes to Tyler. The company, the money, everything." My mom smiled and said, "Ava was just the trial run. This is the real child." People laughed while something snapped. I stood up, walked to the head of the table, and put down four things: their power of attorney, the house keys, the safe key, and one envelope sealed in red wax. If that were you, would you stay quiet or burn it down? Tell me in the comments and subscribe, because what Dad read next blew my family apart in seconds. Before my family priced me at $96 million, I had a different life. I was 29, living in Seattle, making just under 300 grand a year as a senior software engineer at a health tech unicorn. I had stock options, late night deploys, overpriced lattes, and a calendar full of investor dinners. I thought I'd made it. I thought I finally mattered. Then my phone rang at 5:47 a.m. You know that kind of call. The one where your brain already knows it's bad news before you even swipe to answer. A nurse from a hospital 2 time zones away said, "Is this Ava Brooks? Your father's had a massive stroke. We're taking him into emergency surgery. You should come. Now." I packed a bag with shaking hands, opened my laptop, and sent one email to my manager. "Family emergency. I'll be out for a while." I thought a while meant a week, maybe 2. It turned into 5 years. By the time my plane landed, my dad was on a ventilator in a medically induced coma. Machines were breathing for the man who had never taken a sick day in his life. 2 days later, my mom went in for what she thought was bronchitis and walked out with stage 3 lung cancer and a chemo schedule that looked like a war plan. I stood between 2 hospital rooms, 2 parents hooked up to tubes, and realized I had just become the adult in the room. I took unpaid leave, then more. My "We Support You" company back in Seattle quietly replaced me. My salary went to 0. I sublet my apartment, stuffed my life into 2 suitcases, and moved back into my childhood bedroom. The hospital social worker sat me down with a stack of paperwork and said the state needed one person to make medical and financial decisions, or the courts would step in. My dad could blink. My mom's hands shook too hard to hold a pen steady. With witnesses and a notary watching, they both signed durable medical and financial power of attorney over to me. One shaky signature, and suddenly I owned every nightmare decision no kid ever wants. Our family's company, Brooks Medical Supply, had 90 employees, aging equipment, and a balance sheet that looked like a slow-motion car crash. The CEO, my dad, was unconscious. The unofficial new CEO, me, had never even taken a finance class. But here's the thing about being the reliable one in your family. No one asks if you're ready. They just hand you the fire and say, "Don't let anything burn." So I didn't. I learned to read ventilator settings at 3 in the morning and vendor contracts at 4. I watched videos about cash flow and corporate law on a hospital couch that smelled like bleach. I negotiated with insurance companies on hold so long I memorized their elevator music. I signed payroll so people got their checks on Friday, even when I had no idea how we'd survive to the next Friday. Meanwhile, my little brother Tyler was gone. Last anyone heard, he'd gone to Arizona. Painkillers after a back injury had turned into pills, and pills turned into an arrest record. The court gave him a choice: rehab or prison. He picked rehab and never called again. No texts. No "how's mom?" No "do you need help?" Just a silent black hole where a brother should have been. Picture this. I'm standing in a hospital stairwell at 2 a.m., holding a styrofoam cup of coffee with one hand and my mom's scan results in the other. The doctor says, "We can try a more aggressive protocol. The insurance probably won't cover it." I look at the numbers and say, "Do it anyway." Because what else do you say when it's your mother's life? If you've ever been the one who drops everything while other people disappear, hit drop a comment, because you already know what comes next. You become the default hero, the unpaid, unseen, unthanked hero, until the day your family looks you in the eyes and acts like you're the villain. That day was still a long way off. Back then, all I cared about was keeping my parents alive and the company breathing. I didn't know yet that every sleepless night, every signature, every compromise I made for them would one day be rewritten and handed to someone who hadn't been there for a single one. Fast forward a few years. My dad can finally talk again a little. My mom is thinner, wrapped in scarves, but somehow more determined. The company is still alive, not because of miracles, but because I refuse to let it die. I've been acting CEO, nurse, driver, therapist, all in one body held together by caffeine and stubbornness. And then one morning, the doorbell rang at 7 a.m. I opened the door with a spreadsheet still in my hand. On the porch, holding a beat-up duffel bag and a rehab folder, was my little brother. "Hey, Ava," he said, like he'd just come back from a weekend trip. "I'm clean, 14 months. Can I come in?" This was the same brother who vanished when Dad hit the ICU, who never called when Mom lost her hair, who was a ghost on every birthday and every crisis. I should have felt relief. Instead, I felt that bone-deep kind of tired no amount of sleep fixes. My mom didn't. She heard his voice, dropped a mug, and ran. "Tyler," she sobbed, clinging to him. "My baby." She cried like he'd been serving our country, not serving time in court-ordered rehab. Within an hour, she had called every relative within driving distance. By noon, the house smelled like cinnamon rolls and second chances. "This family's whole again," someone said. Nobody mentioned the years he was gone. Nobody mentioned who'd been holding the pieces together while he disappeared. That's when the rewriting started. I heard my mom talking to my dad loud enough to carry down the hall. "He wasn't running away," she said. "He was out west making connections, thinking about suppliers, taking online business classes. You know how entrepreneurial he is." Tyler didn't correct her. He just let her paint over the ugly parts. By dinner time, the new family script was set. Tyler hadn't abandoned us. He'd been preparing to take over. The next morning, my mom walked him into Brooks Medical like she was bringing a prince back to his palace. "This is the future of our company," she told the leadership team. Some of those people had watched me sign checks to keep their paychecks coming. They still shook Tyler's hand like he'd saved them. Our COO, whose job I had kept alive, grinned and said, "Do you want the corner office? We can have it repainted by Friday." I laughed. It wasn't a joke. 3 days later, my login stopped working. IT told me the COO had ordered a full security reset. Nothing personal. My board calendar stopped syncing. Strategy meetings happened without me. When I asked my dad, he stared at the floor. "Your mother thinks it's time Tyler takes the reins. You've been under a lot of stress. Maybe stepping back will be good for you." Stepping back. That's what they called being quietly erased. Then came the line that split something open in me. My mom put her hand on mine at dinner and said, smiling, "You're great in a crisis, honey, but Tyler is a leader. You're more support staff." Support staff. In the company I'd kept alive, in the family I'd kept from collapsing. If that line hits you in the gut, tell me in the comments. Because that was the moment my heart cracked. Not when Tyler vanished. Not when my Seattle career disappeared. It was that word, support. Inside the company, people adjusted fast. Some still whispered, "Thank you," in the hallway. Others avoided my eyes whenever Tyler was around, like loyalty might be contagious. I'd gone from the boss who saved our jobs to someone we used to report to. I stopped fighting out loud, but I didn't stop working. I came in before sunrise, slipped through the back entrance, worked from an empty cubicle on the third floor. I fixed pricing errors, cleared vendor bottlenecks, made sure payroll glitches didn't bounce anyone's rent. Then I went home, microwaved leftovers, and opened my laptop again. If they wanted to pretend I was support staff, fine. I'd build something of my own to support. Late at night, while my parents slept and Tyler scrolled business tips in his freshly redecorated future CEO bedroom, I wrote code. I sketched an AI platform that did what our old company never could: predict patient needs, automate supply chains, stop hospitals from running out of what matters most. I filed paperwork for a new company from a co-working space downtown. Different name, different structure, no shared bank accounts, no family signatures. Just mine. My family had shown me exactly what I was worth to them when I wasn't actively bleeding for them. And when someone shows you that, believe them. Then decide what you're going to build without them. This is where everything you've heard crashes into that red wax envelope. Remember the medical and financial power of attorney my parents signed in the hospital? It looked like boring paperwork. It wasn't. It gave me authority they couldn't just take back later because their feelings changed. While Tyler was busy trying on future CEO, I took those documents to a lawyer who didn't know us and didn't care about family drama. I slid them across the table and asked, "What does this really mean?" She read them, checked the hospital notes, and said, "They were competent when they signed. As long as you act in their best interest, this stands. They can't erase it just because they like your brother better now." Then she used the word that stuck: irrevocable. If the company went under, my parents would lose their safety net, their medical care, their entire future. Letting that happen so they could feel better about forgiving Tyler would not be in their best interest. So we did something to protect the one asset everything hung on. We built an irrevocable trust. Think of it as a legal vault. 98% of the voting shares of Brooks Medical went into that vault. On paper, the trust owned the stock. The trustee, my lawyer, not me, controlled what could happen to it. Once it was signed and notarized, there was no undo button. No, wait, Tyler's back, never mind. Cold? You can call it that. It was also legal and brutally protective. Now jump to the inheritance dinner. 20 plus relatives, board members, the family pastor, crystal, lamb, speeches. My dad stood, raised his glass, and said, "Tonight we officially transfer everything to Tyler. The company, the houses, the accounts, 96 million in total." The room applauded. My mom looked straight at me and said, smiling, "You were the practice run, Ava. Tyler is the real legacy." If that line made you flinch, hit like. Imagine hearing it from the woman whose life you nearly broke yourself to save. I stood up, walked to the head of the table, laid down 4 things: the original power of attorney, the house keys, the safe key, and the envelope sealed with red wax. I looked at Tyler. "Congratulations," I said. Then I turned toward the door. My dad chuckled to the room. "She's being dramatic," he said, and sliced open the wax. By the 3rd line, his hand was shaking. By the 4th, his glass had hit the floor. He read how, 18 months earlier, acting under valid power of attorney, I'd transferred the voting shares into the Brooks Health Foundation Irrevocable Trust. How any sale or transfer without the trustee's consent was void. How the trust could not be revoked. "This isn't real," my mom snapped. "You can't do this to us." At the far end of the table, our banker's phone buzzed. He checked it, went pale, and said, "Richard." The bank just froze the operating accounts and credit lines. They won't move a dollar without the trustee's approval. In under a minute, the 96 million they just gifted Tyler turned into numbers they could see but not touch. Tyler shot to his feet, water glasses crashing. "What the hell did you do?" he yelled. "You're stealing my company." "Your company?" I turned back. "Name one night you spent in a hospital fighting for mom's treatment. Name one paycheck you made sure went out on time. Name one thing you did when it was hard." He didn't answer, just rage. The next morning, HR texted staff, "Payroll suspended." The bank chained the factory gates. Employees cried in the parking lot on live video, asking what happened. My parents sued me. Judges looked at the timelines, the signatures, the medical notes, and basically said, "Being sorry now doesn't make it illegal then." Brooks Medical went bankrupt. The big house got a foreclosure notice. Tyler slid back into pills and eventually into handcuffs. My parents ended up in a small apartment over a laundromat, living off checks that suddenly felt very small. Meanwhile, the company I'd been building after midnight signed its first big hospital contract. Then another. A year later, I was in a glass office high above the city, my new logo on the wall, reporters asking, "Do you feel guilty for what you did to your family?" Here's my answer. I feel guilty for how long I let them spend my life like it was theirs. This was never about punishing them. It was about refusing to let my years of sacrifice be wrapped up with a bow and handed to the brother who skipped every hard chapter. So let me throw it to you. Same story, same lines aimed at you, same betrayal. Would you have pulled that legal trigger? Tell me in the comments. And if you know someone who keeps bleeding for people who wouldn't do the same, Share this with them. Not to say burn it all down, but to remind them you're allowed to protect what you built. And sometimes the only way to stop people from breaking you in patent is to make sure they legally can't. Some nights, when the city's quiet and the office lights finally go dark, I still catch myself wondering how we got here. My parents in a tiny apartment over a laundromat, my brother in and out of courtrooms, me in a glass tower with my name on the logo, and no family photo on my desk. I replay that dinner, that red wax envelope, my mother smiling as she called me the practice run, and sometimes this question sneaks in. Am I in the wrong? I used the law like a shield that felt a lot like a sword. I didn't lie. I didn't forge. I protected what I built when they tried to hand it to someone who never showed up when it counted. But there's a cost to choosing yourself that nobody warns you about: the silence afterward. Here's what I've learned. Don't pour your whole life into people who see you as a backup plan. Don't confuse being needed with being loved. And if you have to choose between your sanity and their approval, pick your sanity. Every time. If this hit something in you, let me know in the comments. Would you have done what I did? Am I in the wrong? And if you want more stories that people don't say out loud, hit like, share this with someone who needs it, and subscribe so we don't have to be this honest alone.